Okay, welcome everybody to Rashpal Rise Capstone Thesis Defense. Well, it's not officially a thesis, but Capstone Research Project Defense. We are very pleased to be here at this culminating moment for the final member of the 2024 graduating class, 2025 graduating class. So it's a real pleasure for me as instructor for the comms management Capstone research course to be here today with you, Rashpal, on this great day. So rules of the road, very simple. You have 25 minutes after I finish talking here to present your research paper. Afterwards, we will go through 2 rounds of questioning, led off by your Capstone supervisor and then by your second reader. After that, I have the privilege of asking a question should I wish to, and if I, as chair of the session, should I not, then we go to the gallery and potentially a second round of questions. After that, we're going to put everybody in a waiting room where I hope you all stay and don't leave, because 5 or 7 minutes later, we will welcome you all back, and the committee, evaluation committee for Rashpal's Capstone will declare its verdict. So verdict, its decision. Right? So without further ado, it's 12:03. So let's say you have until 12:29 Eastern time, 9:29 Pacific time, your time, to present your work. So the floor is yours if you'd like to share your screen.
Sure. Let me do that.
Oh, very good. I can see it. So the floor is yours.
Okay. So thank you everyone for joining today. And thank you very much, Alex, for that introduction. Now, I'm here today to share my capstone study on shaping career paths in public relations, understanding cultural, ethnic, and familial influences. Now, this topic, it wasn't just an academic research for me, it was also a personal journey that shaped my own lived experience and progression in public relations, and I hope to share some of that with you. I want to begin by this quote that was said to me quite a few years ago. You can't on the balancing the identities between 2 different types of cultures, a collectivist culture and individualist culture. And this hit me hard because as a turban Sikh Canadian, I've experienced tensions between individualist and collectivist cultures, and I had to navigate who I am and how others perceive me, especially in the public relations field. Now, this study explores that in-between space where culture, family, identity, and careers intersect, something that some practitioners, the LPAC practitioners, experience more often. Now, we make career choices based on our passions and interests, what we find personally meaningful, or what will ensure our financial stability, security, and independence. But for some people of color, there is an added layer. Those are the expectations that our parents or our family may have on which career paths we choose. And when you think about a field like public relations, representation matters. So I wondered, what does or should a PR professional look like? Do external factors influence career decisions? And what are the lived experience of practitioners from diverse backgrounds? Now, this reflection led me to my following research problem. How and to what extent do cultural, ethnic, and family influences impact decisions to pursue education and a career in public relations? Now, I gathered some insights not only from my own personal experience, which I'll talk about later, but also from PR students, parents, instructors, and practitioners, each bringing their own personal unique perspectives. Now, when I talk about PR students and PR practitioners, I wanted to clarify that people I talked to were from identified as being from different cultural and ethnic backgrounds that weren't white or European, just to make sure that there's some validity in this research. Now, for this research, I identified 4 research questions. How and to what extent do cultural, ethnic, and family preferences and expectations impact a student's decision to pursue post-secondary education in PR? Number 2, what factors do parents consider significant when advising their children about a career preference? How can PR instruction and education programs better support students from diverse cultural backgrounds in developing their career aspirations? And finally, how do PR practitioners from diverse backgrounds, how have they navigated their expectations and their identities in progressing in their careers? Now, to ground the study, I looked at key PR and cultural theories, the first being excellence theory and requisite variety. This argued that diversity within PR teams is critical for effective communication and decision-making, and that the internal variety should reflect the diversity of the communities that the organizations serve. Yet, underrepresentation in the field remains a concern. And as Toth says, PR practitioners continue to be insufficiently diverse to provide requisite variety to their organizations. Another area explored was the dimensions of ascribed and avowed identity. Anthony describes ascribed identity as the attributions assigned by others who seek to label an individual as a member of a given group. Now, an avowed identity is how we ourselves want to be seen and how we identify our own identity and what we want to portray. For example, my avowed identity is that of a senior public relations practitioner who is a Canadian-born Sikh, whereas other may ascribe my identity as being an immigrant or a cab driver, which has happened. Now, Shaw et al. Apply these identities to the PR profession as well. Our avowed identities, we see ourselves as strategists and advisors, while others label us and describe us as being spin doctors and publicists. I also looked at individualistic and collectivist cultures. In Western cultures like Canada and British areas, independence and independent thinking is emphasized. In more collectivist cultures like Eastern or South Asian cultures, family and community influence can weigh in on such decisions as career choices. This influence can make navigating personal aspirations and perceived family expectations more challenging. Another area I looked at was critical race theory, which reminds us that race and skin color shapes experience and factors in as an aspect of group identity. It challenges what Taylor and Pomper refer to as the notion that the white experience is the normative experience. It recognizes that race is part of an intersectional identity, emphasizing that different aspects of a race-informed identity becomes prominent depending on the context. And finally, I use autoethnography as a research method that combines autobiography and ethnography. And I would like to thank my friend Amy Kennedy for this great opportunity and great decision to use this. Now, this method allowed me to include my own story and be both a subject and researcher, connecting my personal experience and reflection to academic insight. So I wasn't just researching others, I was actually unpacking my own story and my own experience. Now, to ground more, I wanted to share a little bit about my autoethnography, my lived experience. When I first entered the PR world, I didn't see anyone who looked like me, certainly not someone who wore a turban or a head covering. That showing up as myself challenged the typical image of what I saw of what a PR professional is supposed to look like. At the same time, I was navigating a deeper tension between the pull between my family's preferences and my community's views of what I should be doing and what my own personal individual goals were. Now, I didn't have a roadmap, no mentors that shared a lived experience that I did, so I had to become my own guide, my own mentor. I learned to advocate for myself, to trust my instincts, and to keep going when I felt like I didn't belong. Now, it wasn't always easy, but in pushing through the internal doubts and external bias I experienced, I not only found my voice, I carved out my space for others and found myself at the leadership table. Going into my study now, as far as research methods, I used a mixed method approach in my study. utilizing both surveys and interviews to gather qualitative and quantitative data. I collected 53 survey responses and conducted 20 in-depth interviews involving students, parents, PR instructors, and PR practitioners. Now, I did plan to conduct up to 4 student focus groups as part of my study, but due to some unexpected delays during the ethics review process, I had abandoned that option. Now, for my first research question, what I found from students is that 62% of students said their parents had some influence on their decision to pursue a post-secondary career, but 71% said that influence did not extend to influence in their choice of study. So they had their own choice, they had opportunities to go which way they wanted to go. Some students, though, especially those from Eastern Asian and South Asian backgrounds, said there was still some pressure to pursue traditional careers like in medicine, law, and engineering. But many also noted that a shift was occurring as parents were increasingly prioritizing their children's happiness and independence in their career paths and what they were most interested in doing and where their most talents would be most affected and most helpful. As well, though, for parents, that support continues to grow as parents learn more about PR profession from their kids, and began to understand more the stability and advancement opportunities that are available that profession could provide. So where they could go and breadth of opportunities. So not just be generalist, but also they could be focused on certain areas like social media, like media relations, like community relations. They can pick and choose where they want to go. In that, though, 81%, I'd say, of students said that their families support their PR studies. And as they're going through and even as of doing this study, that percentage rose to 90%. So more awareness and more support for them. One student said that once they saw the possibilities of the field, they began to support them. Now, there are some students who did wrestle with the internal conflict they're having in managing what the expectations that their parents had or they were getting from their culture or community. Also, while in the process of wanting to choose to follow their own passion desires, so that conflict between living those two cultures. One student did reiterate that people should have the right to choose what they want to be. If they let others dictate their future, they won't be happy in the long run. Students also mentioned representation. Representation does matter, not just at the professional level, but also at the academic level. Seeing others in PR who look like them, who helps them be more confident and succeed in the profession. For example, one student who was from the Black community said having a Black instructor in the class helped her raise her voice and helped increase her ability to be able to speak in public and see herself in the career field. Now I turn to parents. And when I spoke to parents, I heard a common thread emerge. Parents were consistently saying that they wanted their kids to succeed. And they define success as stability, respect, and security. Now, traditionally, that meant going to medicine, law, or engineering. But these parents also stated that they saw value in creativity, passion, and communication careers like PR, especially where they felt that their children would thrive or that would really the children would find most interest in it. Now, another factor that played in for parents was in how their experience growing up and in their upbringing. One parent who was from Hong Kong, they went through the British education system, said that they felt no pressure from their parents to pick or choose or follow a different career, and felt that and believed that they wanted to make sure their kids had that same experience, so that the children have their own independence to decide which career they wanted to follow. Their focus for parents was they just want to make sure the kids were financially secure, were happy with what they were doing, and also could carve out time for a work-life balance and to raise a family as well. Now we turn to the classroom, and for instructors in looking at the classroom, many said that they do see diversity in the student population, and it continues to increase when you see more first and second generation Canadians going into PR programs, as well as seeing more international students coming in to study here. 94% of those instructors said they always or frequently have students from diverse backgrounds in their classes. But in regards to going further to that, 66% said that they also incorporate discussions around diversity and representation in the field. They do talk about in the classroom and make sure that's part of the curriculum that they have. Now, some instructors did report that there are students who still feel that pressure from their parents to pursue a traditional career in those careers I mentioned before. One instructor said that she's had students in the past whose parents didn't want them to go into PR. They thought it would be a waste of time. They would rather their kids have gone into like being accountants or being nurses or something in the health industry. Now, there were some barriers and some biases that came into play in the experience that some students have had. Language, especially, and this is especially for international students. There were language barriers, perceived lack of English skills knowledge, and cultural adjustments that had to be made on how the education system worked here in Canada compared to what happened what the experience in their home countries. Fear of bias that their ethnic identity would have a negative impact on their ability to look for a job, and that there's a lack of role models available to them. This could make some students feel isolated or uncertain about whether they could get into the career, and reduce the level of confidence that they would have. Now, to my last research question was around challenges that are going back. The final part of the question for instructors was the challenges and how instructors address those challenges in a way to support diversity and students in general. And what they found is that bringing in practitioners from diverse backgrounds as guest speakers, as panelists, as mentors, sharing case studies that were actually could be general case studies that in the industry around, whether it's crisis communication, social media, corporate communications, that they're actually diverse representation of the speakers who present those case studies, and also case studies that were developed by this group. These role models can share their experience in the industry and the lived experience, but also help students visualize their own career path in PR. Instructors also suggested that it was important to build mentor-mentee relationships and have a strong mentorship program with having practitioners from diverse backgrounds coming in and having this, because this would demonstrate that for students, that there are people in the profession that look like them and make them feel that they have a place in public relations. Now we'll go into with PR practitioners, my final research question. And this asked, and most of the practitioners that spoke here said that their parents often support their career choices, especially when they gain more understanding of the profession itself, the job security involved, the potential for success and notoriety that would get, as well as the fact that there was some work-life balance in there, depending on where they worked. 79% of practitioners surveyed that their parents had little or no influence in their career choice. And 65% said that their parents supported their choices of career. So again, like students, practitioners were open up and had no pressure to conform to a particular workload or work style. That said, though, there is still some cultural pressure that some see, albeit it's in a lesser form. And this especially occurs for practitioners from South Asian backgrounds, from what I found. Two practitioners that I interviewed noted experience living in a sandwich generation or joint families, where parents live with their adult children and their grandchildren, or when extended families live together, compounding generational and cultural pressures. In addition, as one professor noted, they are expected to care for their parents and their children, but sometimes are asked to care for their extended family members as well as maintain close contact with them. So much more of a generational and cultural need for that community and sense of community. Now, half the practitioners surveyed, the survey itself said that ethnic identity hindered their career progression, although they felt that their identity should not be a factor at all in their career choice or in their career. But they did say it had some impact. Now, similar to what my colleague found in her findings, Shauna K. Williams, and I know Shauna, I think I saw her name on the call, and what she noted in a couple of areas was that some practitioners even face name-based discrimination and the devaluation of international foreign experience. I also find there was also assumptions that people had on the same for some different backgrounds on their level of knowledge in English and language skills. One practitioner did report to me that they were starting to get more interviews after shortening their name, while another said they landed a job faster after switching to their white-sounding married name. Even Canadian-born professionals face bias. One South Asian practitioner I talked to said her language skills were constantly questioned, and she felt her work was judged more harshly than her white colleagues. This speaks to the notion that some BIPOC practitioners feel that they need to work extra harder and show their receipts to get ahead in the industry. Perhaps white practitioners don't need to do. The final thing I saw within within the area of with practitioners was that they felt that more work needs to be done to ensure people from diverse backgrounds are represented in the PR industry. Advocacy, professional mentorship, and representation was mentioned as key factors. Practitioners also emphasized the need for representation at every level, especially in leadership and decision-making roles. As one practitioner said, diversity must be at the table, at events, in training, and in leadership. Now, finally, there are some suggestions and advice that all three respective groups were able to share with others. Parents suggested to other parents that they support their children's passions, assist them in researching potential careers that would interest their children, and to be more open-minded. Instructors recommended that PR programs embed diversity and representation in the curriculum and in faculty, and more diverse practitioners as guest speakers, and to help with these mentorship programs. Finally, practitioners suggested that potential students and other practitioners educate their parents about the PR profession and career opportunities, seek mentorship opportunities with practitioners of similar backgrounds, and develop leadership skills to eventually reach and stay at the leadership table. So now there were some limitations that I did experience, as I mentioned. One was the fact that I couldn't conduct focus groups with students due to the limited time. There also isn't much literature or data available on diversity in public relations in Canada, aside from the experience of women. There was some perception bias when it came to ascribed and avowed identities of PR practitioners of diverse backgrounds, and the perception that bringing in more diversity and representation to their teams meant sacrificing knowledge, skills, experience, and abilities. I was also unable to engage two college programs in time, as I would have had to apply to their research ethic boards to have their PR instructors and students participate in the survey. Also, using autoethnography allowed me to reflect deeper on my identity and how my culture and family experience shaped the path I took, something I haven't done in over 30 years. Finally, for research, there could be more conducted to explore, and I hope to see more of this happen, is to look at BIPOC practitioners' experience in their career paths, representation in the industry, understand the unique experience of first and second generation Canadians, and also probably international students, and also look at the barriers that may be out there for people of color to get into leadership roles in public relations. Now, as far as what I hope to go further, I hope that I can share this research with others, primarily with the PR and education programs and the classes. Also share with professional associations like CPRS and IABC, and industry leaders and associations like the Commission for PR Education based in the US. Also, there may be some information that might be helpful for PR agencies and departments that are wanting to improve be authentic in their representation of their teams. Finally, I want to emphasize that this research isn't just about career choices. It's about the space where identity, expectation, and ambition collide. It's about challenging the idea there's only one way to belong or one version of success. By listening to diverse voices, we start to see PR not just as a job, but as a reflection of the world that we live in. Now, there are a few people I want to thank before we go to questions. One is to the most important people in my life, my wife, Sévigny, and my daughters, Amin and Tharn. This was a family decision for me to go into the MCM, and I really appreciate that they were there with me every step of the way. I thank you, and I love you all. To my amazing MCM cohort team, it was an amazing group to work with, and I'm glad that we're the first group to graduate together. A special shout out to Kevin for helping me with some of the research and some of the analysis that we will do. And a special shout out to Amy Kennedy, who she came up with the idea for me to do autoethnography as a with method, and truly this made this capstone. Thank you so much. To all my instructors, to Alex, to Mo, to everyone else that went through the process and worked us through with us and helped us guide us the way, including our TAs. And I want to make sure we do a special shout out to our admin staff, Kayla and to Lorraine. What a great team, and they kept us on board. I also want to thank, and I know he's here, Devin Flynn. Thank you, Devin, for being there for this group. And I really enjoyed the fact that the support you gave to us and the friendship you provided for the entire MCM courses. Thank you very much. To Josie, my capstone supervisor. When I decided to go this route with this capstone, I knew for a fact Josie was the only capstone supervisor I needed. I know she was the one. She had the compassion I needed to go through. She helped guide to make sure that there was rigor involved and that there was really sound science involved, knowing I was using autoethnography, as well as the fact that all the challenges that I went through along the way, she was there every step of the way and really supported me. And finally, a very special thank you to Dr. Terry Flynn. You have been my friend, my supporter, my cheerleader, my confidant for so many years, and you were one of the reasons why I took on the MCM program and continued to excel in this field. And I don't know how much I can say of how valuable that relationship has been to me. So thank you very much. And with that, I'll take questions.
Very good. Well, thank you very much for that wonderful presentation, as well as heartfelt acknowledgements moment. I can tell you from my perspective that it's reciprocal. You know, it's been fantastic to know you all these years and to work with you through the program. And with that, let's move on to questions. So the first round of questions comes from your supervisor, Professor Cassano Rizutti.
Thank you, Rashpal. Need a moment or so to just recover from your thank you. It was very special. So thank you for sharing those words with all of us. First and foremost, it was an absolute pleasure to review your excellent capstone research, and I want to start by acknowledging its significant strengths. Your research addresses a very relevant and important topic concerning the influence of culture, ethnic, and family expectations on career choices in public relations, particularly for first and second generation Canadians. The study really effectively integrated autoethnography. I believe you're the first student to do this type of research. And so that's very special. And it added a unique dimension, a very unique dimension to this research, because you shared your rich personal context, enhancing the depth of the analysis. And the mixed methods approach used many approaches, combining surveys, interviews, the literature review. It strengthened the validity and reliability of your findings. It is well structured, your research, with clear questions, a comprehensive literature review, and valuable insights into the evolving perceptions of public relations. Your personal journey adds a powerful and compelling story, making the research engaging and impactful. To build on the strong foundations, I just have a few questions on a few of the topics. And I'm going to start with the autoethnography question. You use this method in your research, and the use of autoethnography is a major strength of your work. How did you stay objective and reduce any bias you may have in your research?
For me, I understood going in that the topic that I chose was predicated on kind of my experience going in, and that it it could have potentially be seen as that I was being too targeted in what I was doing, and maybe making it more about my experience rather than provide that scientific background. But what I did with this though is in looking at the literature review I did, specifically on autoethnography, was the need that is to not look at it just as a personal experience, but it was a different lens being applied to the experience brought in. But the need to ensure that that had no play into what I was doing with my research. So the way I did it for myself was that I kind of keep the autoethnography right, and I kept it separate from the research that I was doing. And I really did focus in doing the research, seeing what I heard is looking at wanting to make sure that I was really looking at the perceptions perspectives that were provided by the interviewees. So by particularly with practitioners and students. And one of the things I wanted to make sure I wasn't doing is hanging on to threads on what I had experienced. And luckily for me, the way I kind of saw it was because a lot of the times what they experienced, I experienced some of that, but not all of it. So I can compartmentalize on, okay, I can't talk a bit about that. I need to focus on this. And then when I was going through my research and even doing the questions and even looking at the results, focus was on what have I found in that research. When I looked at my discussion side that's where I could incorporate some of that in my own experience in, but I had to ensure that to do that, I had to incorporate the literature side of that too, and to make sure it's very clear that that was my experience, is not reflective of what I heard from my studies. So I had to make sure that that happened throughout that paper, and it did make it more challenging overall because it was like I think Terry, you mentioned at one point, it's almost like writing two different papers. And then you have to see where does it combine and make sense. So I did have a separate section on my autoethnography, my experience that was completely separate from the literature review, completely separate from the results and findings that I found. And the only time I brought it back in was when I talked a little about that discussion or conclusion phase where I could kind of support it, but then it only, the way I wrote it, it only supported or was supplementary to what I was hearing through the research that I found from my interviewees.
I know, Rashpal, you were very careful in understanding how to use autoethnography. I know every week we talked about it in our meetings, and thank you for your answer and sharing a little more detail on how you kept those research methodologies separate. My second question is on the practical application of your research. You made several recommendations for academic programs, maybe some of the professional associations and the PR industry. If you had to choose one of your recommendations to implement, which would it be and why? So if you had to choose one of your recommendations.
If I was just to do one to start, there's at least 3 or 4 of them that I would like to do. I think I would look at what is the kind of the easiest one to go with as far as how do we approach things. And so I would go with the more on the practitioner side. I think there'd be opportunities for me to reach out to organizations like CPRS, like IABC, as well as CPRE, to begin to share that just overall, finding that I found and what we're hearing from the various participant groups and that's occurring. So, and it's particularly, for example, for CPRS, it's really kind of understanding their organization, and I know they're looking at some, what do we do next? What our membership base looks like going forward? Is look at, okay, what are the things, what can we move on in regards to how do we make sure that we're reaching out to these various communities and understanding what some of the challenges are, and maybe take that a sense of maybe that white experience that CPRS have had, we've seen as the normative experience that people have. Maybe we need to break that apart and really look at things in a different way. And maybe we do need to open our eyes and say, okay, maybe we need to identify that, hey, maybe we have been so, not just kind of do this kind of a focus, but more kind of widen our focus, see, okay, what are the areas and why aren't these people joining us? What can we do to make that happen? And is there stuff within our association that we can do? So speaking at that level and taking that conversation to the next level with an organization like CPRS, I think could be helpful at least to get the start, to get the word out so they're hearing what students are saying, what practitioners are saying, and what's going on with the industry. So that would probably be the one that I think would be easiest one to start. The other ones I think need to occur too, but I think that one would probably be one that I can look to doing, sooner rather than later.
Thank you. Those are my two questions. I'm going to hand it over to your second reader, Terry.
Before I say anything to you, Rashpal, I want to have a conversation with Samirjit to thank her for agreeing to this journey. I know it's been difficult having two young children, and it's been a challenge at times over the last number of years, but thank you for supporting Rashpal in this. We all know how important our family, our bigger communities are, not just our cohorts, but our families in this journey. So thank you so much for allowing Rashpal, my dear friend, to start a journey that we talked about in a lot of depth 8 years ago next month in Kelowna. And that conversation was about how do you do this, and finding the right time, and that wasn't the right time for you. Pandemic happened, but you found your other family in MCM 16 in this journey, and for that I think you should be very thankful that timing allowed you to get to know these people and to count them as friends as well. So I want to talk about the opportunities and challenges that have presented yourself through this journey, and what your research, what was the really big aha moments for you from that moment around that dinner table in Kelowna to now. How have your perceptions of what those barriers and opportunities and challenges for people like you in this profession?
I think the one thing I really found was that these kind of barriers that were there weren't really seen. The constant challenge for people of diverse communities, ethnic and cultural communities, it wasn't really talked about much in that, even before. Even when we talked about the need for more women leadership in CPRS, for example, and concerns some people had about, well, why are these different groups emerging? Uh, there was no real thought of, well, maybe we should do something about it. And I think for me too, I found it's like we were still stuck with, this is the way we always done it. This is what we're always going to do it. We're not going to change. You have to conform to what we think is happening. I think that was something I was kind of struggling with, and that's why I stayed quiet a bit on that. Even with CPRS, because even though they're a wonderful family to be part of, I just felt when I mentioned it a couple of times, they weren't really ready to have the conversation. And it wasn't until even at CPRS, at these conferences, even before the time you talked about when I first went into CPRS conferences, I was the only non-white person there. So, and I'm used to that. So I'm also used to the fact is, if I'm a very small minority, how are people willing to really talk about what I want to talk about and mention this? So for me, it took me a little while to kind of get a sense of, okay, are they really ready to talk about it? And it wasn't until 2021 with the death of George Floyd, where people were like, oh, okay, this is coming up again. We've got to address this. And that's when CPRS, I think, kind of woke up to and realized we have to at least say something or do something or acknowledge it. And that's when I started noticing, okay, well, maybe they're actually going to start listening. And so that's where I kind of got a bit more involved in that part in regards to, okay, well, something needs to happen. Like there may be an opening for PR and CPRS to actually think things a different way. The challenge I'm finding is that it does take a lot of work, and it can't be just one person doing it. So having that people involved and having different areas involved too. I think there's more openness to, let's get working, let's look at how we can incorporate diversity, and maybe we need to start looking at things in a different way. But also acknowledge the fact it's going to take work to do that. And I think that the fact that everything that's transpired from 8 years ago to today, is that I think I can finally feel comfortable and confident enough that I can speak my opinion, my perspective on this type of topic with my own personal experience, and people be opening to listen and to really look at what was my ascribed identity of Rashpal when he started in the field, and can I move them into what I see as my avowed identities that, yes, I'm a turban Sikh. I'm one of the first and still one of the very few in the industry. But also I bring a different perspective, and even the things that I bring and I talk about, even though it's mentioned in my lived experience, is those that can provide value to our understanding of where PR needs to go and how do we open it up and make sure we're more welcoming to all practitioners.
Well, I would call that a mastery now, that you have evidence to be able to support that lived experience, right? You have done you've lived a life, you've communicated a lived experience, but now you have empirical evidence to be able to support this notion. And so, when we talk about being a graduate of a master's program, you like your colleagues have gained a mastery of this subject, and for that, and the journey that you've been on over the last, you know your whole life. I'm so proud. I'm so very proud of what you've done and how you've demonstrated this, and you still can become a beacon for those who now see you as somebody that they can emulate and aspire to be as well. So congratulations. Alex, over to you.
Very good, Terry. First, I'm going to ask you and Josie if you have further questions. So, Josie, would you like to ask another question?
I'm okay, Alex. Thanks.
I'm
Okay.
good.
Okay. This was an interesting piece of work because you went into autoethnography, which is a method no one's used before in the program, but highly effective one. And if you could speak to that methodologically, and I know you had some challenges with the Research Ethics Board, kind of making them understand the nature of the project, and if you could outline the challenges and maybe a key learning on how you do it in a way that would be smoother as a pioneer using this new method, that would be great.
Using autoethnography as a method.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first thing was, maybe it probably would start in 712 is maybe introduce it as a parental method of what autoethnography and how to use it. And I think that was the thing where it didn't dawn on me until, well, one, it didn't dawn on me until Amy mentioned it to me in our last, I think it was in our last June, actually. I think that's when she first introduced it to me during our research or our capstone class. And in talking to Dave Schultz, it's like, yeah, that'd be great. You should use it. And he said, you're already doing it by some stuff you said. I'm like, wow, I didn't know that. And I didn't realize until I actually started looking into it. And this is where Josie and I had long conversations on how do I find out more about this? What research is out there? What do I find? And as I began to read more about it, found in the literature that I was finding is like there is that there is a benefit, there is an opportunity. It's always been there. Apparently, it was as early as the 70s when people started using autoethnography. But understanding of how to use it in a way that would help in a scientific research. So knowing that you can kind of be your own subject in the research. And understand, okay, what are the areas to focus in on? The important role of it being, it's not just a story, it's a reflection to a particular experience. And then, so I looked towards that, and there's different authors I looked to who really focused in on how they used autoethnography in different ways and how they were able to bring in that scientific need. And then the importance of how do you ensure that that you have a scientific method that you use that you can combine with. That it's a lens. So it's not just your own personal story. It's a lens that you're bringing into your research, but it has to be corroborated with scientific data. So in my autoethnography, it was like where was the literature available that supported what I was talking about, or at least I could speak to. So that was kind of helpful in that reach. But then the other challenge is okay, how do I make sure I'm, as I said before, differentiation of how I'm incorporating my own experience into a capstone research study to make sure it doesn't overtake or overcomplicate the research that was needed. So that's why for me it was, and I know there was a lot of stops and starts, there was challenges as far as the numbers I was getting, but I wanted to get as many data points together as possible through my research, through my interviews and my surveys, to make sure there was sound enough information that could actually corroborate what I was saying, but also provide that different nuance that this was more objective way of performing, and then how do I bring that what could be seen as subjective part. So it was really important that um, finally that the autoethnography wasn't the focal point of my paper. It was supplementary to the research that I was finding and the literature I was doing. So I had to be very careful on how to do that, knowing that it was the first time. And I had a good conversation with Terry on this as well. There was really no uh, example from Capstone anywhere else that was available that could speak to that. Of how do you do that in an academic paper? And even when I tried to even look online, it was very hard to find. So I had to really look at, okay, what I've been hearing, what I've been learning through the literature that would guide me in how do I write my own ethnography, and also making sure that it was supplementary to my paper, not overtaking it.
That's great. A very thorough answer. Thank you very much, and useful, because I think just having it on the record here is valuable, because it'll be inspiring to people who want to pursue this kind of research, and your answer is going to be valuable to people who want to pursue this method in future capstones. So thank you very much for that. Before we go to a committee here, I just want to open the floor up to the gallery for comments and questions.
Come on, MCM 16. There's nobody after him. So somebody can ask a question without fear of being asked anymore. Come on. Bring it on. Oh, a bunch of chickens. Come on. Chantal, you have a question. I see it. No way. No.
You do look like you have a question, Chantal.
They're like they have a bond, boy. They're not breaking.
Okay, well, that seeing no questions, I will ask you to go to the
Wait a second, I'm gonna create them. Hold on.
Okay, Terry's gonna create the rooms, and please don't leave. Come back. We'll call you back in about 5 to 7 minutes after we chat about the results of today's session and the written paper, of course.
Okay.
So please go to your room once you see the prompt.